I'm going to start out today by asking a seriously hard question. How many of you feel like you have regrets? Not the kind where you thought bangs were a good idea and spent the next 8 years trying to regrow them again. And I'm going to call out anyone who says they have no regrets, and let me explain why. I actually try very hard to live my life without regrets. Not because I haven't made any mistakes. Lord knows I've got an industrial-sized filing cabinet of those in my basement somewhere, but because I firmly believe that the past is the past, and since there is zero we can do to go back and change it, we don't get do-overs, there's no real time machines, no magical undo button, and trust me, if I ever see one I can buy on Amazon, I've got a list. For the most part, I think the past belongs in the rearview mirror. Not beating ourselves over the head for the rest of our lives. I also believe that regrets in and of themselves do nothing to help us move forward and grow. But I think that anyone who's trying to convince themselves or anyone else that they've never done, said, or decided not to do something and regretted it after are at best fibbing to keep themselves comfortable, and at worst lying so that they don't have to explore something really uncomfortable. I'm thinking of some of the important stuff. Things you did or didn't do, or maybe wish you'd done differently. Relationships you wish you deepened when you had the chance, or the ones you maybe wish you'd walked away from a little sooner. People you wish you hadn't given up trust to so quickly. Opportunities that you passed up. Rash decisions that you wish you'd thought through just maybe a little bit better. The things that by their very nature of not actually having been put completely to rest get up from time to time and wander into our brain looking for some attention. Often at 2 a.m. in the morning, because what better way to ensure that it has our full attention? Because as someone who turned 60 this year, who tries to view my regrets with a little perspective, I can 100% tell you that if I knew then what I know now, there are absolutely things I would have done differently. Sometimes very differently. Of course I would. I've made some really shitty decisions in 60 turns around the sun. Shitty for me, and I'll be honest, sometimes shitty for someone else too. Whether they deserved it or not. And yes, even if they did deserve it, doesn't mean the version of me who I am now necessarily thinks I made the right decision. But here's the important part I hope you picked up on there. The version of me who made those decisions isn't the same version of me as I am now. It wasn't the version of me with 60 years of experiences, lessons, mistakes, losses, scars, and maybe even a little wisdom, and enough life experiences to fill a small, non-climate controlled storage unit. The version of me that had very little data and to base some pretty significant decisions on. And inexperience is a really shitty data collector. So I've been thinking about it. What if when we drag ourselves through the mud for the past, we're putting old versions of ourselves on trial, using today's evidence against yesterday's decisions. So today I want to talk about regret and remorse and shame and the demons we keep feeding around those things. But most of all, why I think it's time we started writing love letters to the version of us who survived long enough to become who we are today. So let's dig into that. Life's messy. Growth is uncomfortable. And healing rarely goes according to our plan. Welcome to Transformative Journeys, where together we excavate what's behind the messy, funny, and sometimes really hard parts of living life through honest stories, a little neuroscience, and a whole lot of curiosity. Together, we'll dig into what makes us tick, because sometimes understanding ourselves is the first step towards growing through what we go through. Welcome back to Transformative Journeys with Joanna. I'm your host, Joanna, and wherever you are listening from, your car, your walk, your laundry room, wherever you are in your journey, I am really glad you're here. So while I don't waste a lot of time on regret, it's not like it never creeps out of my attic or my basement or wherever my past mistakes happen to be stored. But I try really hard not to spend a whole lot of my time feeding it. And that's really where the episode idea for this week came from. Not with regrets, with demons. Not literal demons, the emotional ones, the memories, the mistakes, the things from our past that weren't that great, but we continue to revisit them over and over. And the image that formed in my technicolor mind didn't immediately transmute into emotions like forgiveness or self-compassion or self-kindness. It went directly to how we feed them. No pass and go, no collecting my 200 Monopoly bucks. How when we replay those decisions, whether they're about things we did or didn't do, things we wish we'd done differently, relationships we wish had been different, missed opportunities, or rash decisions, we often view them through a lens of shame. Telling ourselves how stupid we were, asking ourselves why we didn't know better, or see the problem or pattern back then. And every time we revisit those demons, we're feeding them. The event happened once. Or, okay, some of them maybe happened more than once, because God knows I don't always learn my lessons from mistakes first time around. But we continue to feed them for years and years, as if we're expecting them to give us some kind of award for our continued remorse. And the demon isn't the mistake. The demon is the story we keep telling ourselves about the mistake, and the self-punishment we continue to freely hand ourselves every time we feed it. We continue to feed it and keep it alive. And we think we're giving it purpose, that it's somehow useful, that returning it to it is going to somehow help us become a better person. But what we're really doing is we're giving it permission to get bigger than the thing that happened. Because let's face it, often continued feeding causes exponential growth. Now let's take a quick turn into a distinction that I think is important. Because regret and remorse are not the same thing, and they aren't interchangeable. Regret is about ourselves and says, I wish I'd made a different decision. I wish I'd known then what I know now. I wish I'd taken that opportunity. I wish I'd left earlier. I wish I'd stayed. Often it's about things that actually were completely understandable at the time, but we still feel bad about them. Sometimes we regret circumstances that we had no control around. And sometimes we just regret how something turned out in the end. It might include some sadness or disappointment, sometimes some shame, but it doesn't necessarily mean we actually did something wrong. Remorse, now that's a different animal, really. Remorse is about realizing that something we did hurt someone unnecessarily or unintentionally. Something we said that we wish we hadn't. When we handled something poorly or didn't show up in a way we wish we had. Remorse has both an ethical and a rational component to it, and it often includes a desire to make amends or try to repair something, and a want and a willingness to try to do better next time. Which the truth is, sometimes we can, and sometimes we just can't because it's too late. And this is really important. Sometimes we can only repair our lane, our contribution towards the situation. And sometimes it is a 2-lane road, and it's perfectly acceptable to only be willing to repair our side of the street. We don't always have to take responsibility for the whole fucking highway. Accountability is not the same as accepting 100% responsibility. Accountability is accepting responsibility for our lane, our contribution, and being willing to repair that. And accuracy in determining which lane you're responsible for, that's part of growth. We aren't the MTO running around trying to fix all the fucking holes in the road while everyone around us bitches because the lane is closed. And then there's shame. And I can't talk about regret and remorse without exploring shame. Shame is a shitty housemate. Kick it the fuck out wherever you possibly can. And yes, I do know it's a tenacious little fucker that knows all the secret entrances to sneak back in when you're not looking. It eats all the good groceries and never offers a dime to pay for them. It leaves passive-aggressive notes on the fridge when you run out of something. It opens the attic door and lets both imposter syndrome and the qualifications gremlin out to run rampant. And it keeps opening boxes you thought you'd clearly labeled and put enough packing tape on to seal for eternity. Because for a long time, I thought some of the boxes in my attic were correctly labeled. You know, regret, October 3rd, 1989. Regret, March 24th, 2005. Some of those boxes, absolutely regrets. Some of them are still floating around up there. Some of them have been moved to a far corner of the basement. But some of them, they were incorrectly labeled. Some of them should have more accurately been labeled remorse and either stamped repaired, learned, ignored, or not my lane. But the truth is, some of them don't really contain regret or remorse. They contain shame. Shame has a sneaky way of not caring whether it started with regret or remorse. And it turns your ring-size box into a refrigerator box, climbs inside and says, "Excellent, I will take things from here. Self-flagellation will commence shortly." And let me tell you something about shame. It's also a terrible minutes taker. It doesn't capture the whole story or the circumstance. It edits in things that don't belong and removes context, and it doesn't give a shit about your age, your resources at the time, or your intentions. Shame takes what happened and turns it into evidence that we don't deserve love and belonging. Bad relationship becomes evidence that we're unlovable. A parenting mistake becomes, "I'm a bad parent." The job loss becomes proof that we're a failure. That time you said something kind of dumb or even hurtful, that's exactly the kind of evidence it needs to convince you that you're stupid or not a nice person. It forgets everything except the mistakes and loves judging you on it. It likes nothing better than sitting back and watching us think that we need to suffer in order to prove that we've learned a lesson. And worse still, not only does it never mention all of the hundreds of things that we got right, it squashes them and pretends that they deserve zero space in that attic. That is what shame does. And shame metastasizes. It steps way outside of what actually happens, and it morphs into who you are. Regret says, "I made a mistake." Shame says, "I am a mistake." Remorse says, "I hurt someone." Shame says, "I'm a terrible person." The event becomes evidence and it transforms itself into identity. And after a while, we stop questioning the story shame wrote, and we mistake repetition for truth. So let's dig into a little bit of neuroscience around this, because it's been a while since I've really brought neuroscience into a conversation, and this one definitely deserves some. And well, I just love science, neuroscience. So there's something called the "I knew it all along" effect, more formally known by psychologists as hindsight bias. Just like it sounds, it's the tendency for us to look at past events and tell ourselves that we should have known, even if there's no possible way that we could have foreseen the impact of the outcome. And shame takes that as the perfect opportunity to use it to rewrite the history and the story, and to convince us that the results should have been obvious and the outcome was inevitable. But that's just bullshit. We cannot possibly know what we didn't know, unless we're psychic, and I'd wager the vast majority of us aren't. We can't realistically expect our younger or past selves to have information that wasn't yet available, let alone to have used it to make a decision. Think of it like 2026 Joanna prosecuting 1986 Joanna for something she did in 1985. The trial's rigged. The evidence didn't even exist, let alone apply, until sometime in the 2000s, after she'd lived long enough to learn from other lessons. It hadn't happened yet. But we're willing to carry on with the trial anyway, and move forward with condemning, convicting, and sentencing her to a lifetime of shame based on a narrative built on shit we generated after the fact. While also, by the way, not allowing us to enter all of the good decisions and great things we did as exhibits in the evidence files. So quick court recess here. Not to sell you shit. I don't have anything to sell. But hey, if you ever come up with an epic idea for swag you'd love to see related to this show, I am all ears. Did you know that there's a blog version of every podcast episode? Yep. If listening isn't usually your thing, or if you just like a slightly different take on what we're talking about today, head over to my website. You'll find a link in the show notes. There's lots of other stuff to explore there as well, and I'd love to know what you think. All right, let's get back to it. So think about it this way. How many years are you going to spend judging yourself for failing exams you were never qualified to take? I can't look back at my 16-year-old self and expect her to have made more mature decisions. Looking back at 25-year-old me, I can't expect her to have made better relationship choices, education decisions, life decisions. What qualifications did I have to base those decisions on? Let's be honest. I had a partially developed prefrontal cortex, a very thin file folder of life experiences under my belt, and 2 young kids I was trying how to figure out how to be the best mom I could for. We make decisions based on the best information we have at the time, which wasn't fucking much back then. How can 60-year-old me look back on her and say, wow, I was stupid? No, I may have made a few stupid decisions, or a lot, but I wasn't stupid. I was underqualified to make the decisions in the first place. Keep that shit talk in perspective. The 60 years of questionable accumulated wisdom I have now didn't exist yet. Tuition fees for that wisdom was expensive and paid for on the slow payment plan with years of experience. And yet somehow, she got me here. And yours got you to where you are now too. So maybe those younger versions of ourselves deserve a little less criticism and a lot more credit than we are actually giving them. Maya Angelou says it best. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Now, can we just stop saying some stupid shit, or more importantly, believing it? If you've been through something hard, maybe lost someone you loved, or had your life changed profoundly in a way you never would have chosen, or have been through something traumatic for you, this isn't about pretending every cloud has a silver lining. It's not about claiming every painful experience has a Kinder egg with a secret gift inside. Everything does not happen for a reason. Every mistake is not some kind of gift. Nope. That's a fucking hard no. And if my son not dying was a gift, I'd like to return it, please. Fish out the gift receipt for me. Some shit happens for no apparent fucking reason to people who don't fucking deserve it. Some things happen because people make mistakes. Some things happen because a bad decision was made. Some things happen because systems and processes fail. Some things happen because humans are humans, and all of the above. My son died because he made a mistake based on a bad decision where he wasn't following a process designed to keep him safe. A young human being human. There was no deeper meaning. He's not in a better place. There was no gift from my loss. My eyes twitching a little there. Sometimes life is just unfair. But we don't have to pretend that pain or suffering was a gift in order to build something meaningful afterwards. There are no little nuggets of value hidden inside those hard things like loss, trauma, or pain, waiting to bloom into beautiful bouquets of meaning. We can, however, try to create meaning when life hands us a shit sandwich. Nobody says we have to pretend it's cake when it's handed to us. The question isn't whether it's a sandwich or it's cake. The question is, are we going to chuck the sandwich in the garbage, or are we going to figure out how to use it to fertilize the garden? Then wash our hands and take steps to nurture the flowers. So here's where I want to offer something practical. Remember, you did the best you could with the tools you had available at the time. Maybe somehow you have built a mansion with those tools since then. And maybe all you've been able to build so far is a little bungalow. But you have an attic, or you maybe have a basement. The goal isn't necessarily to get rid of all the boxes. It's to organize them and label them properly. Keep the lessons and throw away the inaccurate meeting minutes. And stop storing ring-size box memories in refrigerator boxes. God help us, don't try to do them all at once. Maybe this week just pull out one box. Open it up and ask yourself honestly, is this really regret? Or is it remorse? Or has shame been living rent-free in that box all those years? If it's remorse, own it. Maybe repair it if you can, but if you can't, learn from it. If it's shame, double tape the lid closed and rename it lesson learned. And when shame sneaks into the attic, because you and I both know it will, opens the box and comes running downstairs yelling, "Hey, look what I found," you can calmly look up from your coffee and say, "Yep, packed that one myself. Close the lid, you're letting the dust out." When you're done with each box, look back at the version of you who packed it. They were inexperienced. They were wildly underqualified for the job they were trying to do. They made some mistakes, and sure, they got some stuff wrong. But they got an awful lot right, too. And if you're carrying a few old demons around with you, maybe this is a really good time to stop feeding them. Maybe it's time to write them a love letter instead, even if it's just in your head. Not a forgiveness letter, not a self-help exercise. A letter to the version of you that survived, who didn't know what you know now, who might have mislabeled boxes in the attic, but that person, they survived long enough to become you. As we wrap up today, I would like to leave you with this. I don't think self-compassion is about letting ourselves off the hook when we've done something we're maybe not so proud of, that we wish we'd done differently, or we wish we hadn't done at all. And it's not about forgetting or pretending it never happened. It's about learning from our past so that we can try to do better in the future, shrinking the shame and leaving behind the self-punishment and just keeping the lesson. And then maybe repacking the memories properly. Because sometimes the stuff in the boxes is actually important. They just don't need refrigerator-sized boxes anymore. It's time to unwrap the shame, regret, self-criticism, and impossible expectations that they've been packaged in and pack them in the ring size boxes that they actually deserve. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Until next time, this is Joanna reminding you that it doesn't matter if you fall. What matters is how well you bounce. This is Transformative Journeys, and I'll see you next time. Come say hi on Instagram at transformativejourneys.joanna or visit my website and say hi there. If you like a bit more bang for your buck, there's an enhanced version of this podcast on YouTube. It has on-screen prompts and beautiful visuals, a more immersive experience, and you can head over to my YouTube channel, Transformative Journeys, to check it out there. If you have an idea for something you'd like to hear me talk about, leave me a message, and you might just see it in a future episode. Hey, just a disclaimer. This podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and should not replace the advice of a medical or mental health expert. I'm not a licensed counselor or therapist, just a human with a mic and a story of growth and resilience. No degree, no fancy letters after my name. I'm a full-time student at the School of Hard Knocks, University of Life, where I figure I'll graduate when I take my last breath. In other words, I'm just Joanna, a fellow human being on my journey through this thing called life, and your guide on this transformative journey.